Why does a one day of heavy monsoon rain flood Mumbai streets? Why is the city always under the threat of coming to a grinding halt like 26/7? And despite the warnings, why is climate change still not seriously deliberated upon? Climate change isn't going to come in like a giant typhoon. It's already happening. Our weekend exclusive is an analysis on Mumbai's looming ecological disaster as we try to find out whether the financial capital of India is sinking. Shocked residents of Mumbai, India's financial capital, have been living in fear every time it pours cats and dogs after the deadly 26/7 deluge of the city that made headlines all over the world. Post 26/7 flooding of Mumbai streets has become an annual affair. So are these the first signs of climate change and global warming taking a toll on Mumbai? Yes, say experts.
The fact is that climate change is happening, and we've known that for about 20 years. In fact, the Ministry of Environment recognized that fact as far back as 1989. And if you see the CRZ notification, the draft issued in 1989, there is a paragraph which says that areas which are vulnerable to climate change will be classified as CRZ1 category, which basically means that there would be no development of any kind within 500 meters of those areas. Now that is one aspect that has been conveniently forgotten and overlooked in all the planning that has taken place.
This year the long dry winter and the alarmingly early monsoon is already making farmers nervous. It could, as the impacts increase, do worse damage, dry up rivers, increase threats of diseases and bring natural calamities at frequency not seen before. And the city will face worse. Experts say that pockets of Mumbai will resemble Kevin Costner's movie Waterworld, not in the next 90 years, but just in 10 years.
If a seawall starts collapsing and water starts entering in through the low-lying areas, then obviously there are parts of cities which will be extremely vulnerable to this kind of impact. And a classic example has been the Juhu-Villeparle scheme area, where during the past two high tides, the highest high tides in June and July, seawater has entered low-lying areas even without any additional rainfall pressures, and those areas have been flooded, which really indicates that Mumbai had better watch out and we had better start taking precaution. And my advice to everybody is don't buy flats along coastal areas, don't buy flats which are vulnerable to flooding, and think very, very wisely before you put your hard-earned money into structures that are going to be extremely vulnerable to climate change.
According to experts, unprecedented rise in the sea level of about 1.2 mm every year will submerge low-lying areas like Juhu, Back Bay, Mahalakshmi and Worli, amongst many others, that will all be submerged by 2018, going by the rise in sea levels, say experts.
मी इंटरनेटमधून प्रिंट काढून तुम्हाला दिला की they have classified cities which are likely to flood due to global warming, आणि त्याची व्याख्याही केली आहे. तर दिस इज हे इंग्लिशमध्ये आहे, पण इंटरनेटवर अजूनही मराठी उपलब्ध नसल्यामुळे आम्ही इंटरनेटच प्रिंटआउट काढतो आणि त्याचं मुंबईला ॲप्लिकेबल मराठीत करतो. तर मुंबई हे शहर जगातल्या शहरापैकी व्हल्नरेबल टू ग्लोबल वॉर्मिंग अँड रायझिंग सी लेवल दिलेलं आहे. याच्यात दुसऱ्या ह्याच्यात मी पाहिलं, याच्यात न्यूयॉर्क, नेदरलँड्स वगैरे इतर सगळेच या क्लासमध्ये त्यांनी दिलेलं आहे. हा स्टडी पब्लिश्ड इन इवन टोकियो इज इन इट. तर पुढे शहरं दिलेलीच आहेत. एन्व्हायरमेंट अँड अर्बनायझेशन लिस्टेड मुंबई विथ टोकियो, न्यूयॉर्क, शांघाय, जाकार्ता अँड ढाका, वेअर मिलियन्स आर एट रिस्क ॲट फ्लडिंग अँड हेवी स्टॉर्म्स.
Mumbai has expanded exponentially but in an unplanned way, affecting the city's capacity to combat disasters. A report published by IIT Chennai in May 2008 says that Mumbai has a bleak future. There are reasons for this. The Bandra-Worli Sea Link, an ambitious flyover project that has come under the fire from environmentalists for making ecological compromises. The flyover crosses the sea has pinched the mouth of the Mitti River that drains most of Mumbai's excess water out into the Arabian Sea.
High tide and it surges as it does every day. And suppose there's a big deluge at that time, it will not be able to drain out normally because you've narrowed the exit. So it will then swell and flood.
We had anticipated this. In fact, I was on the committee that suggested to them that this is a bad idea. We suggested that instead of doing these flyovers first, let's have public transport, let's have these footpaths, let's do this. As is the way of the world, we were ignored. Even now, I don't see the learnings. I read the newspapers, committees after committees, all designed to see that the commercial investments are still protected. But is the river protected? No.